I'm Louise Cooke, and this is the Genealogy Gems YouTube channel. And as you can see, we are at Roots Tech 2014. This is the go-to genealogy conference here in the U.S. And I've invited somebody who I knew had at least listened to a couple of episodes of the Genealogy Gems podcast, but I invited him because he has a fascinating class that he taught here at Roots Tech, and that's Michael Cassara. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Lisa.
Thank you so much for being here.
It's a thrill. It's great. It's amazing. 8,000 plus people.
Aren't you a New Yorker?
I am.
And here you are in the snowy Utah.
I missed the worst weather week of the year, though. So,
you did. And they predicted 6 inches or 6 feet. I don't know how much it was here, and it didn't happen.
It was pretty bad right before I left. I left on any day but Tuesday. I wouldn't have gotten out. But
really?
I left Tuesday. I got out. So,
wow.
But businesses closed Wednesday for the first time this year. So
really?
That was, yeah, it's pretty rough this year.
I'm sure there were a lot of people here at Roots Tech happy that you made your plane.
Oh, well,
because you had one of the first classes yesterday on opening day.
I did.
And I'm looking at my schedule. I put it on my calendar. Putting things in their place, paying it forward in a digital age. And just the title, grabbed me. Putting things in their place make great sense, but how are we paying it forward in a digital age? What was this all about?
Well, it stems from a hobby that I developed over the last couple of years. I mean, in my own research, I've had some great moments where I've inherited a box of photos or something like that. We all love those moments, right? And a few years ago, as you said, I live in New York, and we have the Hell's Kitchen flea market, which is kind of this wonderful Saturday and Sunday flea market year-round. And there are always boxes and tables full of old photos. And they sell these to artists and to people who want something old-like for their mantle. But I'm sitting there going through saying, there are names on the back of that.
Oh my gosh, there were.
And it's so... it's so frustrating as a genealogist, as someone who cares about history. You're sitting there saying that could be my second great-grandfather, but it could very well be someone else's.
Some family historian on the other side of the country just wishing and hoping to find a photo.
And so that I'm certainly not the first person to have done this, but plenty of people have over the years. And I got, so I started kind of. Part of it was also just to test my own research skills.
Yeah.
Most of my lines are Italian and Sicilian and German and Irish, so I have some research blocks on all of those, and so it became a nice way to really kind of see if I could find a descendant or an heir or somebody who was in fact looking for that, and so I started buying a few photos and ultimately got. I've now had about 40 or 50 different hits where I've found somebody who was eager to get it, and in many cases they're saying, "I've never seen the face of my great-grandfather. There it is," and it's a wonderful feeling.
That's the paying it forward part.
Yeah. So I wanted to come to Roots. I've come to Roots Tech the last 3 years. This is my first time presenting, and I wanted to give, basically. Try and inspire others to do the same, and I had a nice group of people. I felt like I was, training the army to go out and pay it forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you find that most of those photos had something written, or did you? Because if they don't, you don't have to give up, right? There's still other photography information on there.
There is, and I mean, in those cases, the majority of them don't have any identification. I think a lot of the times, even within my family, I know, well, I had a box of photos, but there weren't any names, and I didn't know who they were, so I got rid of those, and, and I'm saying, but I mean, for my presentation, I have 3 I's. They have to be identified, they have to be interesting, and they have to be inexpensive, so the idea being that I buy these for $2 or $3 or $5, I mean, they're not, and now, we also know that just because something's identified doesn't mean it's identified correctly. It could have been somebody down years later who said, I think that's Uncle Jasper, but so I do, there are techniques to kind of date a picture, and by hairstyle, by wardrobe, all of those things, and I do try to take that into consideration as well, at least in my own research, and I spoke about that with my group yesterday, just in terms of, it's not necessarily going to be a shoo-in, but if you can at least isolate, okay, the studio was in Northampton, Massachusetts, and the people that it says are depicted are in fact people who lived in that area at that time, then I can give it to somebody else and say, it's your problem now. But
Right.
I mean, sometimes it's happened where I have a picture of someone as a very young man and the family only has a picture of him as a very old man. So in that case, you can even use facial recognition sometimes to say, okay, this is really the right person.
Now, so you're touching on some of the tools. What are some of the top tools, the tech tools that you're using? Talk about facial recognition. If somebody were to come across a picture and think, I'd like to try what Michael's challenging me to do, because with the end of the Random Acts of Genealogical Kindness website, really it's becoming something that we all need to take on. And there's a lot of talk about it on Facebook, and that's almost becoming the place where you put the word out and then you go back. But what tools are you turning to specifically when you're trying to do this?
A lot of the time I'll just start with a Google search. I mean, some of my best hits have been, because a Google search almost leads me to the most passionate individual about that thing.
Somebody who's posting about
created a whole, it could be a web form, it could be, if they have a website with their GEDCOM posted or something like that, but beyond that, a lot of the times I use Ancestry and Family Search to try and find, on Ancestry I use the member trees, the public member trees, because that's a way to find someone who has those people in their line. It might be a distant relationship, it might be a very close relationship, but it's a great way to get contact information, or at least get the ability to send a message. Other times I've found people, I've even, with some of them, just because I can't find someone doesn't necessarily mean it has to end there. If I find a photograph of someone's Uncle Jasper, I just take a nice high-resolution scan, and I'll attach it to the Find a Grave Memorial or the Billion Graves Memorial, which Billion Graves just added that feature this week. So it's a wonderful way to put it out there and kind of bait the hook a little bit, and maybe in 20 years someone will come by.
Are you putting the photo out there, hoping somebody might spot it and say, oh, I know that face?
Or Wiki. There are many different websites that let you create a memorial to an ancestor, whether or not it's your own ancestor. So by getting it on the web, if someone comes looking for it, I could be sleeping and they could still find this photo and then figure out how it got there.
Absolutely.
So I do that sometimes when I've given up finding somebody who's a genealogist researching that person in particular.
Wow. Are photographs the only kinds of items that you're working to kind of pay it forward, or what other areas could we do that?
You know what? If I find something, I'm usually I need to start looking at my bank ledger.
It can become an addiction.
No, it is. I took a trip up to New England this summer. I went to Maine and back, and I hit every country, antique store on the way, and there are many, and I'm going in. I found a marriage certificate that I was able to get in the right hands. Yeah, it was a beautiful, frameable, late 19th century marriage certificate, and sure enough, I found someone on Ancestry the next day that, it cost me $3 and $6 to ship it, so I in my other life I work in the entertainment industry, so I need all the karma and the good energy I can get, so it's really a wonderful feeling for, the price of a hot dog,
Share one of the stories. What is one of those reactions that you get from somebody, and what the difference it made?
The very first one that I did was kind of, it was kind of extraordinary, because it was a lot of the time when you go to these flea markets, it's many generations from how they were originally preserved, in terms of a lot of these antique dealers will sort things by size,
and they've taken the photo out of its original context. So even if some of those other people are the same family, you've already lost the order in which Grandma put them in, which can really tell you a lot.
It can, and that's another thing I talked about yesterday, is think like an archivist. Retain the original order as much as possible. The first one of these that I found, though, was, in fact, all the same family, and it was about 10 or 12 cabinet cards, all gorgeous pictures, and I think I paid $20 for the whole lot of them. And I went home that night and I started poking around, and I found a very serious genealogist on Ancestry who was floored. It was, because I think about, I have a lifelong goal of finding a photograph of one of my great-great-grandfathers, and I have most of the rest at this point, but he died in 1928, so I'm not giving up hope. It's got to be, someone took his picture, but, at the end of the day, we all want to get a message like that sometime. And I just think that the digital age gives us that opportunity to really help others, and hopefully by paying it forward, maybe we'll get a little treat ourselves down the line.
You talk about the karma.
Yeah.
I truly believe in this because I have a great-great-great-grandfather.
Yeah.
He died in 1926, 22. It was between that era. And I knew the date. I knew a lot about him. I even had a little obituary about how he died with his boots on. He got hit by a train, I think. But I remember I was invited to go to just a gathering of my father and his cousins. Mm-hmm. So it was like a little reunion, but just his generation. Yeah. And he said, well, you should come because you're the family historian. Bring the copy, print it out of your database. I said, sure. And I remember printing it, and I looked at my husband, and I said, there's that George R. Moore. Wouldn't it be amazing just to walk in there and somebody has that picture? Because I got to believe a picture was taken of him because it was that recent. Yeah. I walked in, and I'm not kidding, within 5 minutes, I'd handed out a couple of the copies of the printouts, and one of the cousins walked up and said, oh, this is wonderful. Now, your dad said you had this. I wondered if you have this picture of George R. Moore. I did not tell my father that I was looking for this picture.
Right.
And I just went, they had to pull me off the ground. I was so ecstatic. Yeah. And I think that there's just something like you say, if you're giving and you're putting your hands out, eventually they do get filled up again, and it just all comes around.
I think so, and I've had a similar story in my family where this summer I was visiting a cousin that I had never met, and he had all of these photos, but then he had a color copy of a photo of my great-great-grandmother or my great-grandmother rather, from when she was a very young woman, and it was identified and everything, and I'm saying it's a color copy. It could only have been made in the last 10 or 15 years.
So somebody's got this.
I found my cousin in Portland, Oregon, and she was like, I think I have that one. And so now I have the photo in a high-resolution scan and everything. So they're out there. You just have to, before there's another estate sale or another foreclosure or whatever it is, you have to move in and find things.
Any other last bits of wisdom that you gave your audience that you can share with mine about paying it forward?
Well, I mean, truly to try and not, as much as these things are disrupted by their nature, to try and, if you're going to take it on, really take it on, because the worst thing, the almost worse than just leaving it, would be to take one identified picture from a group of pictures that are all from the same area. It might, a lot, and when I do it, I keep track of what dealer I buy it from, things like that.
Oh, brilliant.
Just because I know that if I got that phone call and said I have this one picture, I'm going to want to know where the rest were. So it's helpful to just kind of don't just dive in and start looking for anything identified, but try and take stock of everything so that if you do get that call, you can then say, I know where you can look, because I know that in my family I would recognize certain individuals if I saw other photos of them. So it's good to be able to kind of leave some breadcrumbs and know where they're left.
And that everything is a potential clue, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We can't sweep anything away.
Yep.
It's all part of the wonderful mystery that is family history. And I am so glad, Michael, that you got a chance to come in here and spend some time with us. And we love it.
Big fan, so I'm happy to be here.
Oh, you're so sweet. If you want to learn more about this, tune into the Genealogy Gems podcast, and we're going to have more videos here from Roots Tech. So how about this? You see a subscribe button. It might be below this video, it might be above this video, but click it because it means that we're going to send our videos to you so that you'll see them as soon as they come out. Thanks again.
Thanks,
Wonderful
Lisa.
to see you.
Absolutely. Thank you.